Here we have dense regular connective tissue. Dense regular connective tissue, the fibers move parallel, so they move in one direction. If you look at the fibers, it's like a flowing purple river here. Because I'm in connective tissue proper, all of these cells, these are fibroblast nuclei. Okay? The main fiber type is going to be collagen. Let's look at another example, same thing. Now this is hard to see the flowing river, but it's still, you can see it's unidirectional, right? It's going one direction, and so it resists stress in the direction of the fibers, so things like ligaments and tendons. Collagen being the primary fiber type, fibroblast being the cell. This is dense irregular connective tissue. You can see the fibers going in multiple directions. If I took this last, slide here and I cut it up and spit it back out, it would look like that, right? So blended it up and put it back out onto the slide, and here it is. And so it's going in all different directions because this is something like a joint capsule or underneath the skin. You're going to have this dense irregular connective tissue that's going to resist stress in multiple directions. Collagen also primary fiber type, just like dense regular. This is just another example. We're actually in skin. If you go deep to the skin, there it is. There's a dense irregular connective tissue. And then one more example. So we looked at this before. We said, oh, this is stratified cuboidal. Yes, but then around it, all of this is dense irregular connective tissue. And the multiple directions of the fibers is what's going to give that away. Okay, let's go through the model fast as well with the tegmentary. So we've got layers. This is the thick skin on this side of the particular model, and I'm going to show you the zoomed out version. But if we look at that first layer, okay, on the outside, going from the outside in, it's called stratum corneum. So we've got this right here. This yellow layer is the extra layer that we only see in thick skin. It's called stratum lucidum. If we go deep to that, you see that grayish, bluish, whatever that is right there. Underneath the yellow, that's a granular layer called stratum granulosum. Underneath that, we have this purplish layer, which is the stratum spinosum. Where's my spinosum up here? It's over there. That's my spelling. And then we got this dark blue line here at the bottom. That's the stratum basale. If we go here, we see these ridges underneath the blue. Those are called dermal papillae. Inside of them, you have these receptors called Meissner's corpuscles. Those are light touch receptors. They look like little flowers, right? So then they're inside of those dermal papillae. Now, the dermal papillae, as far as what they make up, it's part of the dermis. They make up the papillary, so I'm bracketing here. They make up the papillary layer of the dermis. Okay, and we're going to look at kind of a zoomed out version so we can see more stuff here. If we look at this, so the papillary layer is a very small layer, but then if we go deep to that, going down to the hypodermis, down to the adipose tissue down here, that's going to be the reticular layer. If I take the whole thing, it's the dermis. So papillary layer of the dermis, reticular layer of the dermis, making up the entire dermis. The adipose tissue, that layer is called the hypodermis. It's actually subcutaneous. There's a receptor right here. Looks like almost like we cut an onion again. Right? An onion that's cross-sected, and it's called a Pacinian corpuscle. P, think P for pressure. This is a deep pressure receptor. We have some other structures here. By the way, this is thin skin on this side, so you don't see that extra stratum lucidum on this side of the model. All right, some other structures. These white guys here, these squiggly guys with the tubes, those are called sudoriferous glands. Those are actually eccrine sweat glands. You can call it either. This is a different type of sudoriferous gland. Okay? Now, the sebaceous glands, if you look here, surrounding this purple thing, that is called a hair follicle, which surrounds the hair shaft, okay, and hair bulb. And so that hair follicle is going to contain a sebaceous gland. This is the same thing, it's just cross-sected, so you're looking on the inside. And so the follicle surrounds the shaft there, and then the sebaceous gland is on the follicle. Okay, this is the spelling for sebaceous gland. We've got this muscle here connected to the follicle. It's called the erector pili muscle. I like to say erector pili, so I remember it starts with an A. And I think that covers all the structures on there. Let's look at a couple of those things on the slides as well. If I know I'm on the outer layer, okay? Now, tissue, we're talking stratified squamous, and we know it's keratinized because it's skin. But if I'm talking about layer, pay attention, because layer, then we're talking stratum corneum on the outside. Okay? I don't like stratum lucidum. I don't love it on this one, but it's right underneath. And then this purple is going to be stratum granulosum, which makes this spinosum, and the very bottom layer, stratum basal. Not as clear as some of the other slides, but the outside layer, and of course, oops, let's go back. The outside layer and the inside layer we're always going to know. They'll just go to the bottom of it and go to the top area here, right? So those are always indicated. If we go here, this one can be confusing. We want to pay attention. This down to this. It's like two layers, but that's a layer called the stratum corneum. This layer, this purplish layer here, that is going to be the stratum lucidum, that extra layer. And then below that is the stratum granulosum. Spinosum's underneath that, a little bit lighter. And then at the very bottom is the stratum basal. We go here, this is thin skin, all the same things. On this one, I like the basal and the stratum corneum with the outside and inside layers. Some of the other layers can be a little more confusing. If we know we're right underneath the stratum corneum, then we know we're in stratum granulosum. Okay? It's kind of hard to differentiate where the spinosum starts on this particular slide. Same thing here, we got the outside layer very clear, we got the inside layer very clear. And then on this slide, we can see the hair follicle, which surrounds that hair root there, and then we have the sebaceous gland. Okay, on that. Let's go here. If we look in, this is a dermal papilla, and so inside there, that's the little flower you saw in that model. That's called the Meissner's corpuscle. It's like an oval with some lines running across it. If we go here, a little clearer on this one, we can see the oval, some like layered lines are running across. And that's the Meissner's corpuscle, light touch receptor found in that dermal papilla. Onion skin or thumbprint, we've got Pacinian corpuscle. Okay, you can see these clear concentric lines and layers, and so that's a Pacinian corpuscle. It's also singular, right? So we've got one. So we differentiate that from bone because it doesn't have a bunch of these tree stump type things, and the lines are very clear. Right? You got this, the concentric rings are clear in comparison to just having the little dash-looking things, which are the lacunae and bone. But this is Pacinian corpuscle, which is that deep pressure receptor. That's it.